This is the story of the man death couldn't kill, the man who survived the nukes. It was August 6, 1945, and Japan was in the middle of World War II. For 3 years, Japan had been fighting hard against the United States and its allies, but by 1945, Japan was losing badly. The U.S. had cut off almost all supplies to the Japanese home islands. Food was scarce. The war was going badly. And if this war continued much longer, Japan would surely lose. So, Japan's leaders decided they had only one option left. They would have to end the war with a bang, not a whimper. They would have to use the two most powerful weapons ever created, the atomic bombs. The first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Little did the Japanese know that 6 days later, another bomb would be dropped. A second nuke, and this one would hit even closer to home. It was dropped on Nagasaki. It is now known as the deadliest weapon ever created. But back then, no one knew how deadly these bombs really were. All they knew was that 2 cities had been obliterated. Entire blocks of buildings had been wiped off the map. People had been vaporized in an instant. Others had been burned alive. Those who survived the initial blast were now dying from radiation sickness. Hospitals were over. No one knew how to help the victims. It was every bit the apocalypse. But amidst all this death and destruction, there was one man who survived both bombs, a man who lived through hell twice, and his name was Tsutomu Yamaguchi. How did he survive? Well, it all comes down to luck. Let me explain. 6 days before the second bomb was dropped, Yamaguchi had taken a train from Hiroshima to Nagasaki for work reasons. When the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Yamaguchi was in Nagasaki. When the second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, he was in Hiroshima. So basically, if he'd been in Hiroshima when the second bomb dropped, he probably wouldn't have survived. Or if he'd been in Nagasaki when the first bomb dropped, he probably wouldn't have survived either. But because he was in the wrong place at the right time, he survived both bombs. After the second bomb was dropped, Yamaguchi immediately got to work. He helped to organize the evacuation of the city. He also helped to bury the dead. In total, he estimates that he buried around 200 people who died from the atomic bombings. After Nagasaki fell, Yamaguchi worked for the Red Cross. When American troops took over Nagasaki, he helped to administer food and other aid to those who had survived the bombing. All the while, he was suffering from radiation poisoning himself, but he didn't know it. He continued working for the Red Cross until then he went back to Hiroshima to see what damage had been done there. It was then that he learned the full extent of his injuries. He was bleeding internally and his entire body was covered with blisters. He was rushed to a hospital near Hiroshima, but doctors were unable to save his life. On August 19, 1945, he died from radiation poisoning. He was just 23 years old. All told, somewhere between 129,000 and 226,000 people died in Hiroshima, and between 39,000 and 80,000 people died in Nagasaki. 80 years later, some people still live in the shadow of these bombs. Many survivors suffer from illnesses like cancer and heart disease, which they say are the result of exposure to radiation. So why do I tell you all this today? Well, I tell you this because I believe it is important that we never forget what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These events are a dark chapter in human history, a reminder of the evil that men can do. It is a story that must be told and retold until we learn our lesson. We must never repeat the mistakes of the past. I also tell you this because amidst all the death and destruction, there was hope. There was one man who lived through hell twice. And that gives me hope for humanity. As long as there are good people in the world, I believe everything will be okay in the end. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please subscribe. Until next time.